and we signed the silence like a contract. Silence in a newsroom is never free. It costs either scandal or intimacy or both. My name is Evan. I was deputy editor at the Ledger, a paper that still smelled faintly of ink even though the presses had been retired and sold for scrap. The man I loved was Julian, our investigative reporter, who had the gift of making power nervous and the curse of never quite sleeping. We rented a brick one-bedroom above a grocery that sold wine it described as honest. On our fridge, we taped 3 rules on a postcard from Lisbon. Be home when you say. Don't rehearse exits. Kiss before sleep. We never wrote anything about sources who text after midnight, editors who mistake vulnerability for loyalty, or how quickly desire can start looking like a headline. The story that made us was about zoning, mundane until it was. Developers had been laundering influence through shell packs with names like Citizens for shade. Julian lived on coffee and subpoenas for 3 months. I read his drafts, cut his adjectives, told him when the verbs needed to land harder. He'd lean against my desk at 2 in the morning, shirt half tucked, eyes alight with adrenaline, and say, "We're close." I'd nod and hide how much I loved him in that state, dangerous, alive, unavailable to anything but the chase. Then came Adam Rourke, the city's golden-throated communications director, nominally an enemy and functionally a mirror. He called me one evening after we ran a piece about his boss's mysterious donors. "You're sharper than your editor-in-chief," he said. "Meet me. Off the record." I told myself I was agreeing for context. He chose a wine bar that specialized in dimness. He arrived without his tie, ordered for both of us, and spoke in full paragraphs, the way only men trained to lie for a living can. At one point, leaning across the table, he touched my wrist to emphasize a point. It should have felt manipulative. It felt like voltage. When I got home, Julian was still typing. He kissed me absently on the mouth, muttered about an affidavit, and kept working. My skin still remembered Adam's hand. The intrigue escalated like deadlines do, slowly, then all at once. Adam began feeding me tips, not leaks exactly, but breadcrumbs designed to lead Julian into discoveries just shy of orchestrated. We're using each other, I told myself, but Adam's texts had a way of blending business with flirtation. "Councilman X will be at Klein's tomorrow. Worth a look. Also, you wear suspicion well." I deleted more messages than I answered. The ones I didn't delete, I reread. Julian noticed. He notices everything except the things too close to his own pulse. "You're distracted," he said one night over takeout. "I'm exhausted," I countered. Both were true. Later in bed, he pressed his lips to my shoulder and asked, "Here?" I turned to him, whispered yes, and let him make me forget. But even as his hands moved with the steadiness I loved, a sliver of my mind replayed Adam's voice, low and amused. "You wear suspicion well." The first betrayal was small, an almost kiss outside City Hall after a late meeting Adam had contrived. He leaned in too close while handing me a file, his breath warm against my cheek. For a heartbeat, I leaned back instead of away. Then a janitor's cart clattered and we both straightened, laughing like guilty men in a cheap play. But the damage was done. I thought about it in the shower that night, water pounding, imagining what it would have felt like if I hadn't stopped. I told Julian because I've never been able to keep my mouth from confessing. We sat at our narrow kitchen table, the postcard rules watching us from the fridge. He listened, face unreadable. "Do you want him?" he asked finally. "I don't know," I said, which was cowardice and honesty in equal measure. He nodded once, a verdict. "Then decide before it decides you." Adam didn't wait. He invited me to his apartment to go over timelines. He had bourbon waiting, the lights too low for notes. We talked shop until the silences grew longer than the sentences. Then he reached across, took my jaw in his hand, and kissed me like punctuation, firm, final, inevitable. I kissed back. I wanted to stop. I didn't. His mouth tasted of smoke and ambition. We undressed each other with the efficiency of men who think time is an accomplice. His body was urgent, practiced. Mine was guilty, hungry. When I left at dawn, my shirt half-buttoned, he said, "We'll both pretend this didn't happen. We were wrong." At home, Julian was awake, sitting on the couch with coffee gone cold. He looked at me, took in everything, shirt, eyes, the tremor I couldn't hide. "So you decided," he said, my throat closed. "Julian, don't," he cut me off, voice quiet, surgical. "You don't get to write this like a draft." He stood, set down the mug, and walked into the bedroom, closing the door softly, which was worse than slamming it. The weeks after were a blur of stories and silences. Julian filed his exposé. The city shook. Adam called to congratulate me like we were still co-conspirators. I stopped answering. At night, Julian and I occupied the same bed but not the same air. Sometimes, though, he'd roll toward me half asleep, hands searching, body remembering before mind objected. Those moments hurt most because they felt like reprieves we hadn't earned. The breaking point came not with shouting but with a byline. Julian's Peace won a state award. He thanked me in his speech. "To Evan, who edits me even when I'm impossible," and the room clapped. Later, drunk on champagne and recognition, he pulled me into a stairwell. "We can still be us," he whispered, mouth hard on mine. Desire flooded back, raw and familiar. We kissed until my chest hurt. We didn't make it home before we were on each other, frantic, like absolution could be wrestled. After, sweating, breathless, he pressed his forehead to mine. "No more secrets," he said. I nodded, though both of us knew nodding is cheap. Adam tried again, of course. Power always does. He cornered me at a fundraiser, whispered something obscene about what he missed. For a flicker, I almost followed. Then I saw Julian across the room, listening intently to a source, his body exhausted but present. I excused myself from Adam with a smile sharp enough to cut, crossed to Julian, and took his hand in full view of cameras. He squeezed back, surprised, but didn't let go. We're not saints. Even now, sometimes, when Julian works late and my phone buzzes with unknown numbers, I feel the old itch. But we've written new rules on the postcard in darker ink. Don't confuse intrigue with intimacy. Don't edit silence into lies. Kiss even when tired, especially when tired. If anyone asks what kept us together, I don't say loyalty or forgiveness. I say exhaustion. We were too tired to throw away what we'd built, too stubborn to let silence win. We signed it like a contract, with our mouths, with our hands, with the quiet promise that desire might wander but home would always be where the truth survived.